The Trudeau Liberals are still envisioning $10 per day daycare for Canadians, but not all are in favour of it. Joining me now to discuss this and other big stories from the Hill is Lethbridge MP Rachael Harder. Rachael, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney was not in favour of the Liberals' plan since he says it only works for those who work 9 to 5 and will be union run. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Hal, thank you so much for having me out tonight. And certainly you're asking a really important question. You know, there are many parents across this country who work, what we might call non-traditional hours. And of course, also with COVID, more and more people are needing to adjust the way that their children are looked after. That being the case, I think what we see from the Liberals is kind of a one size fits all type of approach, which isn't necessarily the case. But more importantly, I think what we see here is, yet it's the same promise that they've been repeating for years, just repeated once again. So it's a matter of perpetual promising and no action. And that's really what this is, an example of. And so they made the promise. We have yet to see whether or not they'll follow through on it. But I think it's important to note here as well that really it should be left up to parents. As a conservative, I very much believe that parents have the freedom to choose, that they should be able to determine where their money goes. And then, of course, you'll have people say, well, it's going to be free or minimal cost. Well, let's be honest, governments have no way of generating an income other than taxation. So actually, with all due respect, Canadians will be paying for this daycare. And they may not want that to be run by the state.
Many Canadians are also very concerned with the Liberals' Bill C-10, which many argue would infringe upon our freedom of speech. Calgary MP Michelle Rempel already blasted the Liberals on this bill. The Liberal Party says, listen, we just want to control the amount of fake news on YouTube and social media. Well, what do you think?
Well, who gets to determine what is fake news and what isn't, Bottom line is this: I will never be in favor of more government control over free speech. I believe in our charter rights. I believe in Section 2B that gives us the ability to speak freely. And we already have the criminal code. And within that, there are sections that protect Canadians against libel, against slander, against hate speech. And so perhaps instead of more legislation, perhaps we actually just need to enforce the legislation that is already in existence. So when it comes to Bill C-10, what we see is actually, a government that is wanting to reach way too far into our social media platforms and dictate what we can and cannot show. This legislation would go so far as to regulate, the videos that you post of your kids or your cat or you dancing in the kitchen. And it's just unnecessary. We don't need or want a government that to do that.
Or do you feel that maybe, perhaps as well, it may not be fitting with their agenda and their ideologies? So, hey, let's regulate that and let's cut it off at the head.
Hell, I think there's certainly potential for that. I've done a fair bit of reading with regards to Bill C-10 and talked to a number of different experts on this topic. And certainly, they would say that there is a great deal of potential for the Liberals to abuse authority when it comes to this. And by that, what I mean is they get to dictate the terms. So they kind of can make themselves the internet czar, if you will, being the arbiters of truth and what is allowed to stand and what isn't. That's a really scary place for us as a country to head toward. We don't want to do that. We do not want to do that. We must defend freedom of speech.
Amen to that. Rachael, a top government official defended his department's procurement practices recently following allegations that the Liberals have continued to award hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts to a single network technology provider. Now, Rachael, would this not essentially shut out competing bidders?
Yeah, that's exactly the problem here. I as official opposition critic for digital government, this is under my portfolio, and so I've been paying careful attention to this. Essentially, what appears to be happening is there seems to be a sole source contract that is granted to a particular company over and over and over and over again. It's actually not just a one-off. It's perpetual, like what you're saying, which then, of course, is keeping other companies away from the table, unable to bid, and then, of course, unable to secure some of these government contracts, which, as you can imagine, are fairly attractive contracts. And so there's a problem here because we know that when competition is thwarted, when it is not allowed, we know that ultimately the taxpayer pays far more. And what our goal should be, what my goal for Canadians is that they would get the best service at the best price. And when competition doesn't take place, again, Canadians are the ones who get hurt in the end.
Now, you've gone on record of being a big supporter of Alberta's oil and gas industry, Rachel, and believe that the Trudeau Liberals may not be quite as supportive. You say that Ottawa fails to realize there are technological breakthroughs that reduce carbon emissions. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think here in Canada, we lead the world in terms of carbon capture technology and in terms of making the oil and gas sector increasingly environmentally friendly. We should be boasting about the technology that we have, about the innovation that is taking place within the industry. And unfortunately, the Prime Minister is taking the opposite approach, where he actually seems to be, giving the industry this big black mark, which is just totally unfair. Hell, we're talking about an industry that upholds the greatest environmental standards in the world. We're talking about an industry where human rights are not only protected, but I would say where some of the highest paying jobs are found. We're looking at an industry where some of the greatest advances in technology and innovation are taking place. This is an industry that deserves to be celebrated. And with all due respect, without hydrocarbons, which is really what we're talking about here, life as we know it fails to exist. I mean, everything from the shoes we wear to the glasses we have to the cars we drive to having our homes heated. This is our reality. We're talking about the fuel of life, and I think that there is a great deal of importance in terms of being able to advocate for this industry and make sure that it thrives.
Let's talk about those two words now, carbon tax, two words that leave a very bitter taste in the mouths of many Canadians, including here in Alberta. Rachel, now I've seen images, and I remember Conservative Party leader Aaron O'Toole saying that he was going to sign a document to do away with the federal carbon tax, yet he recently came out with his own carbon tax plan. And that didn't sit well with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and many other Canadians who feel that Mr. O'Toole may have gone back on his word. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, you know what, I actually certainly, I can understand. I can understand where their frustration comes from. I can understand where their point of view comes from. At the end of the day, I think, what the leader was trying to do here is he was looking at polling, he was looking at popular public opinion, he was looking at the fact that the political left has owned this issue for so long. And because public opinion is on that side of wanting a carbon tax, he went in that direction with his own creative improvisation. That said, I think other parts of our plan that are worth highlighting are things like, increased attention and investment being made towards technology, towards innovation, towards carbon capture, towards alternate fuels. And I think wanting to make that comeback in terms of doing two things, caring for the environment, but also making sure that we're not thwarting our economic advantage as a country and our place on the world stage.
Here in southwestern Alberta, as you know, being in the constituency right now, we're really big when it comes to agriculture. Very, very big. It's a big part of our industry here and Canada's GDP. Rachel, can you explain right now what help is readily available to our farmers who may need a little bit of help during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to our producers, and of course, I'm extremely proud of them. I believe that agriculture is our unsung superpower. These are the men and women who feed not only this country but the world. And I'm incredibly proud of the technology and the innovation and the creativity that comes out of this industry and the way that people conduct themselves. It's amazing. And I wish every Canadian would join me in celebrating these individuals and all that they've made possible. Look, Hal, at the end of the day, I don't know that this is a group that's necessarily asking for handouts. I would say more than anything here in the constituency of Lethbridge, what I'm hearing from producers is that they actually want the government to stay out. They want to see as little red tape as possible, as little regulation as possible. They want to be given the freedom to thrive, to be creative, to be innovative, to produce food that not only feeds our nation, but feeds the globe.
Now that millions of COVID-19 vaccines are flooding the provinces right now, Rachel, do you feel that maybe Prime Minister Justin Trudeau may call a late spring election And is your party prepared for it?
Yeah, Hal, there's certainly been a lot of speculation around this, and so it's a good question. It's certainly one of the questions that I've had. Are we going to have a spring election? Are we going to have a fall election? Is there going to be an election at all in 2021? Those are good questions. Here's what I can tell you. When I look at budget 2021, which just came out about a week and a half ago, when I look at that, what I see is I see more of an election platform than I do a plan to get through the pandemic, and so there's definitely points within it that are quite partisan in nature, very beneficial to the Liberals. I think the Prime Minister is going to keep his options open. That's really what I believe is happening here, and so he's going to continue to look at the polls, and if the polling shows that he would likely win a majority government, he's going to push the big red button. He's going to go for it.
Now, the reason I was wondering about the election, potential of an election, is from all of the Liberal handouts here, but at the same time, we got to pay that money back. Those are taxpayers' dollars, and our debt, Rachel, is approaching $1.3 trillion. Is this sustainable?
Yeah, Hal, it's a great question. It's a really good question, and I think it's one that many Canadians are asking. We're trying just to manage a household budget. When we hear a number like 1.3 trillion, it's hard for us to fully, wrap our heads around. But when it comes to that amount of debt, we're talking about, the inevitable, which is increased taxes and or a cutback on social programs. Which, of course, as Canadians, we value those things. We value universal healthcare. We value knowing that the poor are going to be looked after if they hit hard times. Those sorts of things are important to us. When a government takes on this amount of debt, it is inevitable that it will have to be paid back through taxation.
Now, you mentioned on social media recently that it's outrageous that everyone around Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was aware of the misconduct allegations against General Jonathan Vance, but the PM didn't know anything about it. You feel the Liberals may be involved in a cover-up. Can you explain?
Sure. One of the things that I observe here, Hal, is that the Prime Minister continuously is changing his answers. And I would say with the amount of information that is out there and the people that were close to him who knew, it would appear to me that the Prime Minister would have to be willfully ignorant to not know something. Like he would have to purposely put horse blinders on in order to not see this. I mean, his chief of staff knew. The Minister for National Defense knew. Like these are the types of people that should be reporting directly to the Prime Minister and bringing him in on scenarios like this, especially when the Prime Minister is claiming to be a feminist Prime Minister. You would hope that he would be interested in knowing about something like this, and then you would hope that he would be interested in taking action on behalf of these women who have these allegations, and they're very serious allegations, and they should be treated as such. So yes, given the information that I have, given the shiftiness in the Prime Minister's eyes when he goes to answer these questions in QP, I would say certainly it seems like there is a cover-up taking place here, and that's really sad. That's sad for Canadians. That's sad for these women.
Bringing things a little closer to home now for just a moment. The application process for your 2021 Youth Advisory Board is now open, and it's open for young people between the ages of 16 and 24. Can you explain what this is all about?
Yeah, for sure, Hal. This is something that I just so enjoy, and that is, sitting around a table with young people and hearing their voices. So I take 8 people every year for a 1-year term, and they are between the ages of 16 and 24, and we meet monthly. And they set the agenda and they lead the meeting. And my job is to listen and to ask good questions and to glean from them. And so it's an opportunity to give constituents who are young in age, vibrant in spirit, and who have a passion for the community and political engagement to get involved and to have their voices heard while they develop a relationship with me over the course of a year.
I love that, giving young people a powerful voice. That's wonderful in our community. Now, on a more personal note, I heard you got engaged. Can you tell us a little bit about this young man?
Yes, Hal. Yes, so I just recently got engaged and we'll be getting married at the end of June. So very excited about that. And his name is Victor, and he's from the prairies, and now he is responsible for facilitating trade and business relationships between Canada and India, which of course is a rising economy, and there's lots of opportunity there for Canada. And I believe that we make a good partnership. So I look forward to being able to introduce him to the community more and more as restrictions lift.
And he's also tall like you, right? So you guys can see eye to eye, right?
Yes, yes, that is true. He's about 3 inches taller than me, so works out well.
Congratulations, Rachel. Very happy for you.
Thank you.
Lethbridge MP Rachael Harder, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Hal.